It is now time for Diary of a Wrestling Fan with Bill Chase. And now, here he is, the man who for such a long time thought the women at Hooters were actually attracted to him, Bill Chase! Thank you, Mr. Podcast Announcer, and welcome to another edition of Diary of a Wrestling Fan, the podcast that chronicles my 33, almost 34, amazing years of being a fan of the wonder that is professional wrestling. Thank you for listening on Spotify, on Anchor, wherever podcasts are streamed. Hit subscribe, hit follow, hit whatever you gotta hit to keep following this podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Oh, as you can tell by the music, it's Royal Rumble time, and I'm going to switch things up a little bit, only because I said last week I was going to do the 2014 Royal Rumble this week, but I'm still going to do that. I'm still going to do the Royal Rumble trifecta. I'm just going to switch things around. I'm going to start with Royal Rumble 92. So there we go. That one has a special place in my heart, and yes, I know everybody loves Royal Rumble 92. Okay, well, there's a reason for that. Thank you very much. So, yes, the Royal Rumble 92 is what I'll be doing this week. But before we get to that, I want to give a quick plug, of course, to Pro Wrestling Ontario on YouTube every Saturday at 3 p.m. You can catch a new episode of Foundation. Matches. Interviews. You'll never know who you're going to hear from. Of course, you're always going to hear from our internet champion, the Wanderer Wade Allen. Right now, the Foundry tournament is underway as I record this. 4 spots available. There's 3 spots already been filled. 1 left. That's right. You can catch up on all the action on YouTube. The Foundry Tournament is 4 separate matches. The 4 winners go on to a 4-way elimination final match. The last man standing will be the new number 1 contender for the Pro Wrestling Ontario Open Weight title. And as this will be up on Anchor and Spotify, the match this weekend, how about Travis Moore taking on Antihero SOS? So that final spot in the Foundry Finals up for grabs. Who is it going to be? I can't wait to find out. That's Pro Wrestling Ontario. There's a link. If you're listening to this on YouTube, there is a link on the side of the video screen on your right. Scroll that way. After the podcast is over, hit that. Subscribe, like the videos, comment, tell us what you think, and just enjoy some good old wrestling here during these crazy times. That's what we hope to do for our fans, provide them with some entertainment that I know that a lot of them are missing these days. Also, follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram, as well as giving us a like on Facebook. Well, indeed, it is Royal Rumble time. Yes, the 1992 Royal Rumble, and it's sad but fitting. Of course, the recent passing of the great Pat Patterson. Of course, this was his brainchild. He helped develop and make this into the wonder that it is. Vince McMahon was not overly keen on the idea, but like he always did with Pat, he gave it a chance because Pat never really steered him wrong all that often. And of course, I'm sure Vince doesn't regret allowing this to go forward. So yes, the Royal Rumble, a very unique, probably the best gimmick match of all. I say it is the best gimmick match in the history of professional wrestling, and there are many. I know some might argue with me at the same time, but again, it's the Royal Rumble. I mean, put it this way, even when business is down, the Royal Rumble usually draws a very, very strong number on pay-per-view. The only show that usually does better than it, I mean, I'm talking about pre-network days, the only show that exceeds the Rumble some years is WrestleMania. So there you go. I mean, the Rumble always has a special place in every wrestling fan's heart because, well, it's easily to get emotionally invested in. You can, wonder what's going to happen, the spots that are going to happen. What's Kofi going to do this year? Who's going to win? Who's going to be the Iron Man? Who's going to be the Final Four? The Rumble very much dictates who's in line for pushes. Even the people who lose in the Rumble, they kick off WrestleMania feuds in it. It serves multi-purposes. And even the first several years the Rumble was, conceived, it was just bragging rights. There was no real prize. Sometimes like they'd mention how, it's big money to win something like this, but yeah, I remember Heenan referencing on episodes of Wrestling Challenge leading up to the Rumble, he'd want his guys to win because, that's a lot of money in our pocket. So Heenan, God bless Bobby Heenan, that man could put anything over, except for, of course, the Women's Wrestling Unleashed pay-per-view, which I reviewed last week. Check it out in the archives. But either way. For the first, because the first Royal Rumble was held right here in my hometown of Hamilton, Ontario. Now, I would talk about that, but the thing is, I didn't go to the show. I hadn't been to a live show yet at that point. I was 4 going on 5 years old. I was probably old enough to be taken to shows, but regardless, I wasn't taken to the Rumble. I didn't watch it on TV. I didn't actually see the first ever Rumble until I think, because I could never find the tape either. I always heard about it. I always knew the first Rumble was here, but I just never was able to find a copy until about, I'd say, like maybe the late 90s, early 2000s, when I think Blockbuster had a copy. So, and I finally watched it. And again, you could see the concept was getting over already. So, and it was just 20 men and like every minute pretty much someone coming out. So, and again, they would tweak with concepts, they would tweak with times. They still tweak with times. They just do it to, tell certain stories and give like segments in the match time to breathe. It's it's going to be one of the most difficult matches to book and put together and make sure that all the right dominoes are falling into place. For the first time ever, actually, about a couple years ago, I actually got to book a Rumble matchup here in Hamilton for a promotion, and you know what? It wasn't easy, but I loved seeing it come together, and thankfully, everyone that was involved in it, every single person that was involved in it, really had a significant role in it, and they all performed really well. Everything was right on cue. So I can probably see why Pat Patterson might take pride in these Rumble matches doing well almost every year. There's never really been a bad Royal Rumble, in my opinion, a bad Royal Rumble match. There's been some that lacked certain, emotions and whatnot, and lacked star power sometimes, and that happens. But overall, I'm never bored by them. Even watching some of them in hindsight that weren't the greatest. The 99 Rumble might be, if I had to choose a worst, that'd probably be it. But even that had its moments, you know what I mean? It's not like it was completely devoid of anything good. So, but I'm focusing on the first Rumble I ever watched on pay-per-view. It was the second pay-per-view I ever watched in my life. Viewers' Choice Canada had just arrived in Ontario in the fall of 1991, around the time Survivor Series 91 took place, and I'm going to talk about that in a future podcast. The 92 Rumble was only the second ever pay-per-view I watched. We had a ton of people over. My dad's best friend at the time, a fellow by the name of Kerry, my uncle Roy, and a couple others were there, and it was just a fun old time. I mean, I loved, this is where my love of gatherings for pay-per-views originated from, because I love getting together with people and just enjoying wrestling. And I was 8 going on 9 at this time. I was in grade 3. I remember the hype for this show, of course. This was the first Rumble that actually had something huge on the line. Of course, the story goes, back in Survivor Series, The Undertaker defeated Hulk Hogan with the help of Ric Flair. The tombstone on a chair, where you broke my neck, brother. And the following week, at a pay-per-view called This Tuesday in Texas, The Undertaker lost the title back to Hogan because Jack Tunney said he'd be at ringside to make sure everything was kosher. It wasn't. Tunney saw Hogan. Yeah, well, Hogan pretty much cheated, and to get his title back, stripped Hogan of the title, and it was put on the line in the Rumble match here. The concept was The Undertaker and Hogan, due to being the last 2 champions, had to draw between 20 and 30. The build-up to this Rumble match was magnificent because, of course, the other factor, besides Hogan and Taker, was, of course, the real world's champion at the time, Ric Flair. Now, Ric Flair just arrived in the company a few months prior to this. He came in with a lot of fire, came with a lot of heat from fans. Again, there was a lot of interest there. And the whole real world's champion concept, because of course that, for those who don't know, for the two of you that don't know, he left WCW with the championship, the NWA title, and easy for me to say, due to a dispute with Jim Herd, and yeah, there you go. I mean, it practically wrote itself, and the whole real world champion thing, it made sense, but at the same time, though, some people say Flair's arrival didn't pay off as well from a box office standpoint as it could have. I think that WWF might have overestimated how many people watched the NWA. The NWA still had a large audience at that point, even when they weren't doing that well. They still had a large TV audience on the Superstation. So logically, I guess clearly fans did know who Flair was. A lot of them did. I see a significant portion of them did, but not every single fan. And especially, I think especially the kids. And it depended on the market they were in. If they were in a market, say, like Chicago or Detroit, that knew Flair very well. Even New Jersey, they'd usually do really well. But, again, with Flair, in other markets that just weren't a strong NWA contingent, or WCW contingent, it wasn't going to work. And sadly, even when they'd go to Atlanta, it wouldn't draw. And Flair was a god. It was one of the places where Flair was a god. Even in the Carolinas, they struggled. So there you go. But mind you, we can't blame that all on Flair. The WWF as a whole was struggling at this point. That's something I want to point out. It seemed as though the business started taking a downward slope towards the end of 1990. Even though the Hogan Earthquake house shows did okay, overall, things were kind of just... Business wasn't hitting the bottom. I don't want to overstate anything. But business was, again, it wasn't as strong as it was, say, in 88 or 89 even. It just was, again, taking us just a slow, very, very slow trajectory down. The Ultimate Warrior becoming champion, again, okay, I'm a fan of the Warrior. Okay, even though he might be a scummy person, I'm a fan of the character that he played. I like as a kid, I love that character. I love the Warrior. I had his t-shirts, everything painted on my face often. But, obviously, as an adult in hindsight, that didn't work. At least not in the main event level that they put him in. Again, that could be attributed to both him and the company. It depends on how you look at it. But that's another episode for another day. So that kind of didn't help things. He still wasn't outdrawing Hogan. Hogan's matches with Earthquake were outdrawing his Warriors title matches. And the Sergeant Slaughter Iraqi sympathizer thing happened. Some people took offense to this. I'm not an American, so I really can't understand. I mean, okay, I can understand why they'd be offended. I just can't fathom, I guess you could say fathom, the full gravity of the situation of being at war and whatnot. I know it was a huge deal, but I mean, at the same time, though, I think on the other side of the coin here, during the Iranian hostage crisis, the Iron Sheik, at times known as Hussein the Arab, he was a hot heel in the territories. Even up here in Canada, in the Tunney territory, he was a big time heel. And again, so they were. It's like they make it this whole thing of capitalizing on wars might be offensive. I can see. And again, I'm not arguing that it isn't. I'm just saying that it's been done, and it's actually worked in the past. Also, and maybe they got away with it because it was after World War II. But Hans Schmidt was a top German heel, even though he wasn't. He was actually from Quebec, and he got over, drew some money, and that's the thing. And some might say, "Oh, Bill, well, should the purpose of war be made to draw money?" But the thing is, though, that's my whole thing, is that wrestling has really derived itself from real life worldly conflict. I mean, you look at the success. Again, it was the Cold War. Yes, it wasn't quite. It's not the same as actually going overseas to fight in a war. But at the same time, though, the Cold War was a very significant deal and had people standing on their tiptoes. From what Americans themselves have actually told me, it was a concept that, again, has just been around in wrestling forever. Again, the success of the Koloffs, the success of Nikolai Volkov was built on all that. So, again, the foreign heels, as they're known as, have capitalized on wars in the past. However, on yet another side, it's like a three-sided coin here. I think Sergeant Slaughter, being an American, siding with the enemy, probably hit home more than those. So, yes, I understand it is different, but at the same time, what's not different is WWF or any other wrestling company, for that matter, capitalizing on a worldly conflict. Even you can go as recent as Muhammad Hassan, but again, some people will say, "Oh, look how well that worked." I don't know. I thought it was working pretty well, to be honest with you. It did. I mean, God, they hated him. And that was what they were capitalizing on. Maybe it's just because of the way the modern world thinks it wasn't made to last, but that is what it is. Now, I'm not saying people didn't have the right to be offended. I'm just saying there's many ways to look at it. That's just how I see it. Also, so again, I digress back to my original point. So many people say the Hogan Slaughter feud also killed off a lot of business too. It did. Their house show matches, which, to be honest with you, Hogan and Slaughter actually had good chemistry. I'm actually going to say that right now. Their matches, I don't recall seeing a bad match between the two. I really don't. And because I've seen their Desert Storm matches they had on the house shows, I've seen about maybe 2 or 3 of them. They were all good. The WrestleMania 7 match was good. So again, Hogan and Slaughter, you wouldn't think it on paper maybe, but man, those two had chemistry. When Slaughter's motivated, he can fucking go. But anyway, so again, digressing once again. Another thing too, of course, the steroid issue, George Zahorian being arrested, but more so to the mainstream audience, Hogan's appearance on Arsenio Hall really shot himself in the foot there. Again, look it up. It's very interesting to say the least. Pretty much contradicting himself over steroids, lying about it. Oh, Hulk. That didn't help matters either. And I think just the WWF was just starting to lose a little bit of its luster. People say about wrestling being cyclical or whatever. And that could be a case too. So there were many elements as to why WWF wasn't doing as well, but make no mistake about it, they still had a very, very strong audience. You know what I mean? They still had a dedicated audience. Some of their markets were still drawing well. Other markets weren't. That's just how wrestling is. Pay-per-views were down a bit. But again, their TV audience was still very large. And overall, they weren't losing money hand over fist. Nothing had really bottomed out yet. Although, spoiler, that wasn't too far ahead. Because things were about to get a whole lot worse. So, at this point, after the Zahorian arrest and the Hogan appearance on Arsenio, things are okay. I guess you could say as okay as it can be. So, again, like I said, the build-up to this Rumble is really well underway. The other big build-up, of course, is Piper's feud. Piper is feuding with Flair at the time as well. And even to the casual fan, again, I barely knew anything about their history together. I knew that they had, careers in, the territories and whatnot before even reading the aftermags and whatnot. But I didn't know they had an actual issue with each other from years back, and even I was captivated by the fact that these two just feuding with each other made sense, even in this 8-year-old's mind. It made sense for whatever reason. Piper and Flair hating each other just made sense. And I was well aware, even as a fan, I was well aware of who Ric Flair was. I'd only been watching WCW for the better part of maybe less than a year at that point, but I knew who he was. Again, I read about him in the magazine since I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. So I was well aware he was a big deal. I knew Ric Flair was a big deal. That's why it was easy to buy him in the main event. Also, of course, another big issue surrounding the Rumble match. Again, so there's so many stories tying to this. Jake Roberts and the Macho Man, they had a really intense, hate-filled feud happening. Again, the closest thing, even though WWF didn't really use blood, it was a close single blood feud that they had at the time. Again, a lot of heat behind that. Fans were really, really rallying behind Macho Man and just despised Jake, slapping Elizabeth and whatnot. I remember watching that. Oh my God. Man, I wouldn't have been surprised if it was in a certain market, because how Elizabeth was loved. Fans were still giving Jake so much heat that night in Texas, but I think it was even maybe somewhere rabid like Philly. Even the Philly fans would turn against him. I don't know. That's just how loved Elizabeth was. So yes, so a lot of intertwining stories here. So then now we go to some of the stories outside of the Rumble match. Bret Hart and the Mountie. Bret Hart had became the Intercontinental Champion at SummerSlam. He really reached a whole new level in his career. That classic match with Mr. Perfect. So Bret was really skyrocketing at this point, but there were rumors, and again, it depends on who you talk to or who you ask, whatever, about Bret maybe going to WCW. So, of course, they took the title off of him. Gee, taking a title off of Bret once the rumors started out he's going to WCW. What an interesting concept, Vince. Anyway, so, yeah, I'm biased still with it. But either way, Bret was really doing well. Then he shockingly lost the title to the Mountie at a house show. He was attacked afterwards. Piper came to his aid. They did the whole thing where Bret had a 104-degree fever. I'm pretty sure he might be close to death at that point. And again, I'm sorry if that offends anybody with going through COVID right now. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying, that's just wrestling. Their tendency to exaggerate things. You know what I mean? So, even as a kid, I'm like, 104, wouldn't that kill him? I even said that to my dad. I said, because I always heard in school, it was like 103 would be pushing it. And my dad just kind of shrugged his shoulders like, yeah, probably. And then, so they announced that Piper would fight the Mountie. So Piper has a shot at 2 titles. The Rumble match, of course, being for the WWF Championship. I probably went so all over the place I didn't even mention that because I was leading up to that. And yeah, so this was a large one to look forward to. You had that feud going on. So Bret and the Mountie was, again, Piper was penciling now. Mountie was the Intercontinental Champion. It was only just announced the weekend television, just literally the day before the Rumble on Superstars and Challenge the following afternoon. And of course, I'm jumping the gun a little bit on the TV here because about a week before the Rumble, Marty Jannetty had a date with a glass window. And that's right, one of the most famous angles that people still talk about to this day. Marty Jannetty, it's been 29 years, 29th anniversary just passed, of Marty getting thrown through the glass window, the breakup of the Rockers, who are a much beloved tag team. It pretty much was at their best when this happened. But I guess the real life animosity with Shawn and Marty, and maybe just Vince thinking it was time. And you know what? I think the timing of it, in hindsight, was right. I hated it. I remember when Shawn did this, I was watching this as it aired on CHH TV here in Hamilton. And when he grabbed Marty, and even my dad, who knows everything about wrestling being a work, and usually can see things like this coming. Like, he's always good at seeing things coming. He's a bit of a spoiler. And then my dad's like, "Oh, don't tell me he's gonna throw him through the window." Like even he didn't believe it. And nothing shocked him. And then I'm thinking, no, he can't. Boom! Right through the window. My jaw was dropped. I just couldn't believe what I saw. And of course, at the drinking fountain at school the next day, that was the talk. I remember my friend Sandra. Again, she was one of my good friends in elementary school. I remember at our lockers in the morning, she and I were talking, like, did you see what Shawn Michaels did to Marty Jannetty? And she's just like, oh my god, I know. Again, and then a couple other people, there were a lot of wrestling fans in my class. We're all talking about it. It was the big news that weekend. So yeah, Shawn's heel turn had commenced, and his career just was never the same after that in a good way. So there you go. There's a lot of stuff happening leading up to the Rumble here. WWF, in my opinion, still has captivating television at this point, even if their business isn't exactly doing the best. So yes, the Rumble match had so much star power behind it. Again, you look at it now, stars, the who's who of wrestling, past, present, future, at that time. It seemed as though every single person in this Rumble meant something significant to the world of wrestling for a significant period of time. And that just goes to show you how well, things were done in the world of wrestling, not just with the WWF, but like other promotions, the territories and whatnot. Because again, these guys all meant a big deal to, at a given time, no matter how long or how short it may have been. Most of these guys in this Rumble match had drawn money at some point in their career. You don't get that in a 30-man Rumble match these days. Again, that's nothing against the talent. I'm just saying that's just how wrestling was back then. So, we're finally going to talk about the show itself, the 1992 Royal Rumble. And oh my goodness, of course, kicking off, and it does Vince McMahon voiceovers. Again, Vince did voiceovers for most pay-per-views still back then, but the Rumble ones were the best. I don't think his voice has the capacity to do it anymore. I wish he would just break it out one more time. One more time before his voice is completely shot. I want him, even if he has to do it for like 10 separate recording sessions leading up to the Rumble on January 31st. I just want to hear a Vince voiceover because he was so good. It was over the top, but that's what was great about it. And it made you, again, as a kid, I'm sitting there. So I'm sitting there with my dad, my uncle, and my dad's best friend. And I think my Uncle Bill was there too. He was not a big wrestling fan, but he'd sometimes watch with us. My cousin Mike was there, but he'd go down to my room and play with my toys, or come up sometimes. Oh yeah, that's right, because my cousin David was there too. So yeah, my Uncle Bill would have been there then. So, so I should actually go back a little bit before I get started on this. So actually, that day, okay. So, my dad didn't force a certain interest on me, but he would urge me to have interests that, were more his liking and not really mine. And it was tobogganing. Now, again, I know, every kid loves tobogganing. I just hated the cold. No, I'm just kidding. The only thing I didn't like about tobogganing was the fact that I didn't like the sleds that I used. I thought they were just kind of... Tobogganing is something I would enjoy for maybe 20 minutes. I actually learned to enjoy tobogganing when I was in my teens more than I was a kid. I actually didn't like it as a kid. In my teens, I liked it a lot. And I miss it now. So there you go. But as a kid, I just wasn't too keen on it. And I remember literally my toes and my fingers are... I'm wearing gloves. I'm wearing double layered socks. And I'm wearing heavy gloves at the time too. I'm freezing and I'm trying to tell my dad. And he's like, oh, well, come on. Just, your cousin... Because my cousin Mike is only 4 at the time. Was having a good time. But even he's starting to freeze. So there you go. And apparently, my dad and my uncle just wanted us to keep on going, and finally we got in the car and drove back, and I said, I just want to go home and watch the Rumble. Again, the Rumble was in the afternoon. Back then, it wasn't at night like all pay-per-views today. Yes, pay-per-views actually happen in the mid-afternoon, around 4 o'clock usually. Eastern time, that is. So anyway, for the 92 Rumble, of course, the show got underway, and the first match was the New Foundation versus the Orient Express. I honestly did not know much about Owen Hart. To be honest with you, I don't even recall seeing the New Foundation. I probably did, and I have a really good memory when it comes to this sort of stuff, but I honestly, unless I missed an episode, I don't recall seeing the New Foundation on TV leading up to this. I recall seeing the Anvil on TV for several months leading up to this because he had joined the commentary team on Wrestling Challenge with Gorilla and Bobby, but again, it's, I hadn't really seen him. I'm like, who's this guy? And I remember looking at, wondering who's this guy? And then my dad's friend Kerry looks at me, he's like, oh, that's Bret Hart's brother. I said, oh. Bret has a brother. I actually said that out loud. Carrie laughs and says he actually has about 8 or 9. I mean, I know it wasn't there were 8 total boys in the family and 4 girls, but yeah, he wasn't far off. But either way, I'm like, wow. And I actually asked, I remember asking, were they all wrestlers? And he said, I think so. So yeah, there you go. I learned Bret had a brother, and I learned he had a lot more. So yes, this match, the New Foundation, the Orient Express. Now, I always liked the Anvil. I always thought he was really good. I didn't know what to expect from Owen. And I remember being really into this. I'm thinking, Owen's really exciting to watch. And even though not knowing who he was really prior to this match airing, I was right into him. And maybe it's because he was Bret's brother, because Bret was my guy, but oh my goodness. And of course I should mention, again, to the maybe none of you that don't already know, Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan are on commentary for this show. And they've had many great moments before, and even a couple after this. This is the peak right here, the pinnacle of their chemistry. Nothing contrived, no scripts, no, faking chemistry. It just came so naturally because they were pros at what they did. Just such pros. And I hated Bobby Heenan, but I couldn't help but laugh at a lot of the stuff he was saying. It was just, it was unbelievable. So anyway, as the show gets underway, as I'm watching this match, some of the people there are actually getting bored. I remember my dad and my uncle getting pretty bored by this. It went on almost 18 minutes. But I was right into it because I was waiting for that hot tag. Owen get that hot tag. I didn't know it was called a hot tag back then, but still. And I cheered when Owen got the tag. Anvil doing his thing as he always did, because it reminded me of the Hart Foundation a little bit. The new Foundation won. They were off to a big push, and then Anvil just didn't know when to stop throwing things. All right. But either way, it led to this. Again, this was Owen's kind of, welcoming party to the WWF, more or less. And I'd say he shined in a big way. So there you go. The introduction to Owen Hart. Again, it's a nice little gem of a match. There's those matches that are called the hidden gems. But even the hidden gems can be on big pay-per-views. Or just matches that are forgotten. A forgotten classic. This match gets largely forgotten. And I think that's unfair because, to be honest with you, and beside the Rumble itself, spoiler, it's the best match on the show. So next up, we have Roddy Piper taking on the Mountie. And, man, I remember we were all, again, my dad only marked out at certain moments. Same with Carrie, same with my uncle, whatever. We were going nuts watching Piper just beat the piss out of the Mountie. Because we'd mentioned this, Piper had never won a title in the WWF. He'd been there on and off for, 8 years at this point? I mean, technically it's more like 5 or 6, but still, he's, I said on and off for 8, so he was debuted in 84, so yeah. But Piper just decimating the Mountie here. The crowd is just going crazy. Again, this is a Northeast market, so of course Piper is a god. And when he beats him with that sleeper, we all cheered. The match itself was, again, fine for what it was. It was more the moment. This is, again, sometimes it happens in wrestling. There's that, that thank you, thank you for everything you do for us. I think this was it for Piper. I think this is just a big thank you. You're going to get a little run with this. I think Piper already knew he's probably going to drop it back to Brad. But still, doesn't matter. At least he gets to say, the Intercontinental title holding such significance at this point. Piper's in that lineage now. Now and forever. So what a moment this was. It was unbelievable. And again, seeing me, someone almost 9 years old, and a few men in their late 20s, early 30s, going nuts for this, it truly was something. And then the next match happened. The Beverly Brothers taking on the Bushwhackers. Now, I'll say this. For some reason, they didn't enjoy all that much the new Foundation Orient Express match. This match made them appreciate that match all the more. It was almost as long. It felt like, again, I remember getting so bored by this. I didn't think Jameson was funny. And Jameson is a nostalgic character a lot of people look back on. I'm sorry. I know some of those, we look back on certain characters in the world of wrestling with, and again, fond eyes nowadays. You know what I mean? Like the gimmicks that weren't the greatest, like the Shockmaster. Because even their train wreck value had something redeemable about it. To me, I tried, even watching this in hindsight, like the cheesy stuff I enjoy. Hell, I get a lot of material making fun of ECW hype man Lance Wright. But even that has some redeeming qualities to it. Jameson had none. None. I never found it even remotely amusing as a kid or now. Now, again, this isn't to say that the man who played him, who was a comedian, didn't commit to the character. He clearly was. But still, it just, no. And I like the Bushwhackers. And the Beverly Brothers, again, Mike Enos and Wayne Bloom, both fantastic wrestlers, both really good workers. But I just felt that the whole thing was more directed at Poffo. Lanny Poffo, the genius, who Jameson was feuding with us this time. Nothing wrong with that. I love Lanny. Still do. Back then, of course, I hated him because, he was a heel, but still, I wanted to see the Bushwhackers beat up the Beverly Brothers and beat up the Genius. But by the end of the match, I just didn't care. And even when Jameson was about to give Genius his comeuppance, he just kicks him in the leg. And to be fair, Lanny sold it like a champ. But I remember my dad saying, "That's it? A kick in the leg? Really? We waited all that time for that?" This was not fun. This was not fun at all. Again, even 8-year-old Bill Chase was not enjoying this. However, the next match I would be a little more interested in. It was the Legion of Doom versus the Natural Disaster. Now, the story of this just worked so well. The Disasters were this dominant big man team. Earthquake had put Hulk Hogan in the hospital in the past. He had a reputation already. Even though Typhoon was formerly Tugboat, again, he was a guy that was pretty well protected on television for the most part. And yeah, again, you could believe these guys could destroy anyone, even the team that destroys others. The Road Warriors, Legion of Doom. Again, I didn't know too much about LOD until they came to the WWF. I had heard about them. But even as I listened, and this is what you get for listening to other wrestling fans sometimes, my dad, Kerry, and my uncle mentioned how these two were the biggest, ass kickers in tag team wrestling history. And even so, they always, to me, that always came off to me. Even people the diehard groups, like the diehard fans, the territory fans, they don't appreciate the LOD's run. No, it wasn't near as good as the runs they had in Crockett or whatever. But as a kid, I liked them. And people try to say they weren't over. I'm like, that's bullshit. Well, the Road Warrior pop kind of... To me, I'm sorry. The fans are reacting to them. That means they're over. And again, those shoulder pads, those little kid shoulder pads sold well. People are like, well, yeah, they're good merch sellers. Well, then I'm pretty sure that means they're over. Maybe they didn't. I'll even agree with them that maybe they didn't draw near as well as they might have in other times in their career. Perhaps maybe they weren't used as well. I'll even admit that too. But things work different in different wrestling companies. I mean, things could have been better, but again, maybe heel LOD, or not even heel, just, I don't know. I mean, because they always try to turn them, and people just end up cheering them anyway. That's what would happen in NWA in late '88. Again, them in the Hart Foundation, they had that one match. It was pretty good. Maybe a long-term feud with them, and then I guess because people were disappointed about the Demolition feud. That's okay. Yeah, I'll give them that. That they really, really dropped the ball now. And people say, well, Bill Eadie left the company. Bill Eadie was still there another few months when that feud started. They could have built something out of it. But it really wasn't, again, made it to be the big deal it should have been. I agree with that when experts say that. Even guys like, Cornette or whatever saying that. And yes, by experts, I don't mean just people online. I mean people like Jim Cornette and whatnot. But that's the thing. It just... To me, they did the best with what they had. Bottom line, I didn't mind the feud with the Nasty Boys. And to me, this made perfect sense. Even in hindsight, this makes perfect sense. The shit-kicking tag team, who's known for dominating their opponents, meets someone who they're not going to be able to dominate or destroy. I know people say that backfired with the Powers of Pain deal. Well, that only backfired because they left the company before the payoff could happen, and some said that made the Road Warriors look weak. Maybe it did, I don't know. But to me, it doesn't make them look weak. It's just kind of a disappointment. But regardless, someone's really into this. This match, again, if you're expecting a 5-star classic here, you're not going to get it. But it was certainly better than the last tag team match. It told a good story. Again, it told a story that the LOD couldn't actually beat them. Because there's no way they're going to get them up in the Doomsday Device. How are they going to hit the power slams off the ropes? Again, it's just it told. I thought again, I like the story here. It's just too bad we never got a payoff. Well, the payoff would be the disastrous turning face because Jimmy Hart sold their title shot to Money Incorporated. So there you go. Now, the Royal Rumble. And even all through the show, Bobby Heenan just wanting to get backstage to see what number Flair drew. It was hilarious stuff. And Gorilla Monsoon poking and prodding. Heenan, oh God, Jack Tunney cutting a promo holding the title. Heenan, Jack Tunney, best president since Noriega. Even as a kid, I understood what that meant. I knew who Noriega was. I mean, I didn't fully know the gravity of, the kind of person he was, but I knew that... Let's just say my parents watched a lot of CNN, even back then. So anyway... Sorry. I might be laughing a lot here, reminiscing about some of Bobby's lines. It's not sad, but it's crazy that 29 years they still make me laugh. More than even some of the best comedies of the 80s and 90s did. So again, Gorilla poking and prodding when they were about to say who number one is, and Gorilla's like, Ric Flair! No. They're just kind of trying to get at Bobby. It was a British Bulldog. And number 2 was Ted DiBiase, $1 Million Man. Obviously, again, the Bulldog had a lot of momentum at this point. He was, again, a very, very popular, and again, when I say this, it's not a negative like many fans on the internet make today. Mid-Carter, high-end Mid-Carter, but there's nothing wrong with that. Again, people stop using it negatively. Mid-Carters serve a major purpose to a card too. Hate to break it to you. Oh, he's just nothing but a Mid-Carter. Like, shut up. I'm sure having him this mid-carder that you criticize will have a spot on the Elimination Chamber main event and make more money in a day than you will in a lifetime. Fucking idiot. Sorry. Idiots on the internet lately have been pissing me off about not just wrestling, but about many things. So, DiBiase goes out in short order. Other than the Virgil feud had ended, Ted wasn't really doing anything. And seeing as how he got eliminated so quick, maybe they're trying to make the Bulldog look strong, because they booked him really well in this Rumble, I have to say. They booked a lot of people well here, though. Maybe it just showed that they maybe didn't have much for him, but I guess, again, the Money Inc. thing happened just a mere weeks later. Him and IRS winning the tag team titles against Legion of Doom at a house show. So, there you go. I mean, but again, maybe that was for the nick of time, because it didn't look like things were going too well for Ted. He's out, so it's pretty much the moment he's eliminated. Number 3, Ric Flair, and Heenan's reaction is so funny. No! Damn it! He actually says, damn it! Which didn't hear much on WWF TV. Even Gorilla, much delayed reaction. Watch your language! And then Gorilla keeps pointing out, and Heenan's like, shut up! And Gorilla's like, did you not hear me, Brain? What? Nobody who's drawn numbers 1 to 5 has been there at the end. I told you to shut up! Kiss it goodbye, Brain. Kiss it goodbye. I can't do it justice, so watch it yourselves. You'll enjoy it. Of course, the story is Heenan, of course, for the very few of you who don't know, was a legendary manager. He had switched to commentary at this point due to issues with his neck and whatnot, and injuries he had suffered. Because the way he bumped his... no kidding, but man, could he make anyone look good. But anyway, so... Heenan was, I guess, Flair's financial advisor. Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, who was out of action with back problems, was kind of Flair's manager, or executive consultant was the title that was given to him. So, of course, no manager or anything could be at ringside. Heenan's just, again, losing it is so funny. So next up, we have a couple people. Again, like I said, now everybody in this match meant something. Okay, Bulldog. Again, he was a star. DiBiase, main event heel for a large time, and if he wasn't in the main event, he was very high on the card. Again, Flair, need I say more? Next up was Jerry Saggs, got a Nasty Boys. Had a really good run. Really good run in their careers. Had success in tag team wrestling wherever they went. There you go. He's on Knobs had gone into a fight where he'd apparently gotten stabbed this weekend. Again, details on that. There's about 7 different stories. He was supposed to be in this, and I think the person who came out next replaced him. So Sags, again, he too would be eliminated pretty quick. So would Haku. Haku hadn't really been on TV much. He'd actually been working for Tenryu's promotion out in Japan, for the most part, since I guess the summer. He hadn't really been on TV at all, really, since the summer. So I was kind of surprised. We were all kind of surprised to see him. Like, oh, what's he doing here? And I guess Knobs not there, so I think this was supposed to be Knobs' spot. So he wouldn't last too long either, though. He'd barely last 2 minutes again. So easy payday for Haku. So again, Haku, very well known. Again, the stories about he's become like almost like a mythical figure with the stories you hear about him now, almost like Andre in some ways. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Next out was Shawn Michaels. Oh, he had some heat coming out. He had some heat. Again, he's in the early Heartbreak Kid, you know, the jacket, the white jacket, the sunglasses. He wasn't wearing those to the ring, though. He wore those in a pre-match promo he did prior to the Rumble, though. And they booked him really well here, too. He lasted over 15 minutes. So as these persons coming out, you know what I mean, like, they're going after Flair, and Heenan's just losing it that they're all going after him, and you know they can't stand it. Like, you know, it's just bothering him. And it, like, even sometimes Gorilla would be under his breath, oh, that he doesn't like Flair. Again, it was just such funny stuff. The Barbarian came out. No, Barbarian doesn't like Flair. And Heenan, great line. I was his manager. He barely liked me. Now that's great. Now that's a good line. And that puts somebody over, too. Like, again, it puts Barbarian over as just someone who'll just beat your ass no matter who you are. Again, the Tornado. Now, this is interesting. When the Texas Tornado came out, they actually panned to a shot of Flair, kind of like, you know, yeah, come on, bring it on, big boy. I just thought to myself, if JR was on commentary here, oh my god, would he be spouting out hit wrestling history? Oh, would he ever? Of course, the famous, David Von Erich Memorial Show, Kerry winning the title from Flair. Flair got it back a few weeks later, but either way, again, a lot of I understand kayfabe back then. That's how it was, but still, it would have been nice. Next was Repo Man. Now, Bill, did Repo Man mean something wrestling? Well, people still remember the character, but Barry Darsow, who played Repo Man, definitely meant a lot to wrestling for many years. Again, Demolition Smash, even a great run as Crusher Khrushchev. So there you go. And Barry played the character well. I don't care what anyone says. He was committed to it. That cackling laugh, again, it looked like he was actually really trying hard to get it over. So I can't fault him there. It's not like he didn't do his best to get I just think something people didn't connect with. It happens. That's next was Greg Valentine, the Hammer. And again, he goes right after Flair. They have a good little chop fest for old time's sake. And again, JR will be spouting out wrestling history. Nikolai Volkov comes out. Just seems happy to be there. I ain't getting paid today. Yeah. I think he hadn't been seen on WWF TV for well over a year at this point. I think after the feud with he had that little feud with Slaughter. I think after that he just disappeared altogether. And then I guess just again I think he was Marty's substitution, and they threw him in there again just for a payday. He only lasted about a minute, so he wasn't in there too long. Then the Boss Man comes out. He gets a great reaction. Boss Man at this point was, again, really hit at his peak in popularity. And you know what? People don't give him enough credit. What hell of a wrestler. Ray Triller, one hell of a performer. And really good in the ring, too. Again, another guy who had really good matches with Hogan. And did really well with him. Hercules, again, this is what I respect about this guy. Literally from like WrestleMania 2 all the way to freaking to the Rumble here. He was pretty much I think he was on every single pay-per-view. kudos to this guy for being able to get a pay-per-view payday for nearly 6 years. I think the only time he main evented is when he was on Hogan's team in the '88 Survivor Series. I'm not kidding. But again, Hercules was what you call a good hand. You know what I mean? He was, again, you put him in a spot and it worked perfectly for him. So there you go. Again, Power and Glory, such an underrated tag team. At this point, Roma had left the company. So it was just Power at this point. And they didn't have Slick anymore either. Slick was left the company. He was getting involved in being a reverend. So yeah, so Hurt came out. He didn't last too long, just under a minute. Boss Man pretty much shit canned him and Reef. So they made Boss Man was in here long. This is the thing about booking the Rumble. You can be in there for a short time and they make you look good. They made Boss Man look like a beast here. They got rid of Repo Man, got rid of Hercules in short order. Shawn and Tito eliminated each other, so that kind of in some way led to their WrestleMania match. Actually, it's weird. Hercules got an elimination with the Barbarian, which, again, Herc would be actually gone from the company shortly after this. And, yeah, so I don't know, I guess, because they were low on the totem pole at this point, and even Barbarian was around much longer. And, yeah, so him and Herc got rid of him, even though, again, like I said, he was in there less than a minute. And, yeah, so, again, this is, again, people complain about Deadwood in the ring during Rumble matches. They cleared it out at the right time, and they booked it so magnificently. It just, everything's happening all at once, but it wasn't like a contrived, elimination out of nowhere. Shawn and Tito, the way they eliminated each other, the body block, and then they just both sail over, it made sense because of who they are. It would make them both sail over the top rope. Shawn did really well here. Again, they booked him so well. They gave him a lot to work with here. They teased him getting eliminated a lot and him staying in. That's where that kind of really started with him. Because he hadn't really done well in Rumble matches prior to this. He wouldn't really last long. And yeah, this was really, again, they're showing they showed they were going to be pushing Shawn. Because they protected him really well. Even Barbarian lasted quite a while. But Bulldog. Again, this is the thing when you build up a sympathetic babyface in a Rumble match. Bulldog, when Flair eliminated him, that got heat. And I guess Bulldog was in there well over 20 minutes. So again, they're protecting the Bulldog because he's a big part of their mid card, which mattered back then. It was magnificent. Also, when it just came down to Boss Man and Flair at one point. And Boss Man kind of eliminated himself. Again, it made sense. Flair just had the presence of mind to duck from Boss Man charging at him. So, this is, again, it's like almost like having two separate matches the way it is. Flair's in there all by himself. Heenan, can't they just give Flair the title? That's good enough. He's the winner. No, it's not over yet, Brain. So Flair's almost like breathing a sigh of relief. He gets to take a breather. Okay, bring on the next guy, whoever it may be. And this, again, great booking here. It's Piper. And again, we're all going crazy like, yeah, Piper. And Piper just goes apeshit on him. And Bobby's almost on the verge of tears. It's just so good. I mean, I maybe just marking out a little too much right now, but I don't care. It's called Diary of a Wrestling Fan, not Diary of a Wrestling Smart Mark. So, yeah, again, and we're all enjoying this. Like, we're all having a fun time. We're all invested in what's going on. We're all anticipating who's coming out of the curtain next. And, yeah. So, Flair had a lot of eliminations, again, at this point. So, again, they're really, again, he's putting on a hell of a performance here. Doing the Flair flop a few times, which I thought back then I'd laugh every single time he did it. We all would, pretty much. So, Piper does this thing with Flair. They had their little mini match. Out comes Jake the Snake Roberts. And he does his usual, mind games type deal, psychology thing. And again, he does it really well. And then when Piper actually breaks up something happening between Jake and Flair, Bobby, oh, thank you, Roddy. Thank you. It's a kilt, not a skirt. It's a kilt, not a skirt. Then he goes after Flair. Why, you no good skirt wearing creep. Oh, you can't write this stuff. That's the thing, because it wasn't written. That's who they were. Like, that's who Gorilla and Bobby were as performers. I mean, commentary does have a performance aspect of it. So again, there's all star power here. You had, again, because even Shawn Michaels, who was just starting a singles push at the time, yeah, you don't know where it's going to go, and he's probably thinking he's going to be pretty low on the card. But again, the Rockers were a big deal. So like I said, everyone in this Rumble had meant something, did mean something, would mean something, either way, to the world of professional wrestling. So Jim Duggan comes out next. And again, he's over like Rover wherever he goes. I was trying to watch some of his stuff in Mid-South. Oh my god, he was a beast. I mean that in a good way. He was just freaking amazing. Then there was, so IRS comes out. He lasted almost a half an hour in this thing, which I thought was strange. Still do to this day. I mean, again, I know they were building up Money Incorporated, but look what they just did to Ted. So I don't know. I guess he had high hopes for Rotunda. I hated him so much. Snuka comes out. Again, it's Northeast, so he's over. And then Gorilla does mention that we're about to go to number 20, and that's when Hogan and Taker can come out anytime now. Because they get the draw between 20 and 30, and Undertaker comes out. He gets a great reaction, even though he's a heel here. And yeah, he starts going, just beating the piss at everyone. Snuka, bye Snuka, still Taker's bitch since WrestleMania 7. Because Snuka didn't last long in there. Either way, Undertaker's going to town on people. And then the reaction next, number 21, the Macho Man. Oh my god. Oh man, this place went insane. And we're all going and says, yes, kill Jake, kill Jake, kill Jake. We're all like, yes, get him. Of course, Roberts powders. Taker tries to take care of Savage. Still gets his hands on Jake. And eliminates himself. And obviously that was a botch. It was a mistake. Well, Macho had a habit of making mistakes in Rumbles, didn't he? Even though he's one of the best of all time, yes. Macho in his matches would have a tendency to just slingshot himself over the top rope to get to the outside or get back inside. He would do that a lot. So I guess it's just out of habit. It happens. It was a mistake, but Gorilla, a pro. He might have been listening to Vince through a headset. I don't know, but either way, if it was Vince, then good for him too, finding a cover. But either way, they all made it work. They said, of course, you got to be propelled out, which, yes, okay, we all know that's not the case. We've seen people eliminate themselves in the past. But the point is that at least they tried something. Because they can't just, if they ignore it, then they're insulting the fans' intelligence. Oh, they're insulting the fans' intelligence by saying that that's not how you get eliminated. Well, yeah, cover up, make the excuse saying, well, maybe that was the rule that year. I don't know. They covered up for it when Vader went back in the ring and threw people over the top rope when he was eliminated in 96. So, yes. Anyway. See, let's move on here. Things are like, again, Flair, Heenan's still having a heart attack every time he's about to get eliminated. Or when he low blows The Undertaker. Or when there's like one low blow, 2 points. Oh, did you see that, Gorilla? He tried to lift The Undertaker. He did not. See, yes, again, so some of them, again, like people say, there's always those spots where the mid-carders come up. But again, it's being spaced out really well. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Then you had the Berserker, John Nord. And again, I actually kind of like John Nord. Some of the stuff John Nord did in the AWA and whatnot. So again, he's pretty cool. Virgil still had a lot of popularity at this point as well. He comes out. So I should say Jake's gone at this point. Colonel Mustafa, no longer the Shiki baby, playing the Iraqi colonel. Wow, they're really beating a dead horse at this point with that whole thing. General Adnan Al-Casey, he was still there. And I think Shiki would be gone long after we got the squash with the Undertaker. Rick Martel. So they emphasize Martel holds the Iron Man record, the longevity record in the Rumble that he set the year prior. So of course they put him over with that huge. And then next up was Hulk Hogan. Of course the place goes apeshit. Hogan goes nuts. He would eliminate the Berserker and whatnot. They eliminate the Undertaker. So there you go. I mean, they hyped up this whole. It was a little disappointing. I thought they'd do a little bit more with him and the Undertaker. And I guess keeping IRS in there a long time made sense, I guess, for heat purposes, because when Piper got rid of him, there was a huge pop. So a lot of the main event guys are still in this match at this point. I'm not going to go over the order of everything. I know I was kind of doing that earlier, but it's going to take way too long. I've already gone over time here in this podcast. Skinner, Steve Keirn comes out right after Hogan. Steve Keirn had a great tag team career, had a wonderful career in Florida. He didn't last too long, though. Actually, he got eliminated fairly quick. The Gator Man. Sergeant Slaughter, need I say more? Sid Justice. Now, Sid had actually been out with an injury, and Sid had a lot of momentum from SummerSlam in his debut going into the fall, just squashing enhancement guys left and right. Fans were into him, and he got hurt. But then he came, this was like pretty much his return. So he got a huge pop here, actually, which kind of makes everything they did after him a little more polarizing. Now, the Warlord is the last one. So, of course, the finishing sequence now, Savage eventually gets tossed out by Flair and Justice. Sid's a house of fire. He tosses out Martel. Slaughter's elimination was great. Over the buckle and out. Oh my god. That was so good. Sid did that really, really well. The Warlord got tossed out by Hogan and Sid, trying to emphasize their friendship, if you will. So basically, of course, we know the finish. It comes down to the final three, I guess you could say. Now, Randy Savage was part of the final four, but again, he goes eliminated. So that actually helps sub up him and Flair indirectly. Oh, I got to go back to when they announced that Flair broke the Iron Man record of being there for an hour, close to. Well, it would end up being there for an hour when he passed Martel's mark. That's good enough. Just give him the title. Can't we just give him the title? Oh, that's too funny. So either way, Hogan. Now they do the ending. Sid shockingly tosses out Hogan. Some people cheer. Actually, a significant portion of the crowd cheered at this. Sid goes, "It's every man for himself, big boy." And Hogan, the greatest babyface of all time, helps Flair eliminate Sid, helps his rival win the WWF Championship. And you go. And the crowd turned against Hogan. Flair, magnificent performance, deserves it. Bobby marking out. Great stuff. And Hogan and Sid's confrontation, later broken up. So again, they had a friendship. I knew they kind of aligned with each other at the end of SummerSlam, but really it hadn't really been played up on TV much because Sid got hurt. And again, even the couple months there before Sid really got hurt, their friendship was never really truly emphasized. They tried to build on that, and to me, it just made no sense. Well, it made sense, but made very little sense in terms of truly building something. So Flair's post-match promo, one of the best promos Flair has ever cut in his career. That memorable line, "With a tear in my eye, this is the greatest moment of my life." Buries Jim Herd in WCW, saying that this is the only title that truly means you're the best. Mean Gene with his memorable, "Put that cigarette out." And of course, Flair, Heenan, and Perfect. Hate to say we told you so, but we told you so. Just amazing stuff. Just shows like this make you proud to be a wrestling fan. They really do. And it's good to relive. I watch it every year before the Rumble. There's a reason why 92 is so heavily revered. It told an amazing story. It was so well put together. A lot of people were protected and booked so well in this. Even Jim Duggan lasted a long time. They, again, trying to make something of IRS. Bulldog. Shawn. Making sure pretty much everyone that stepped through that curtain went at Flair. Because they hated him. And Grillo, again, put that over really well on commentary. Some guys had actual feuds with him going on television. Even though they didn't mention it, but again, if you were a smart fan, watch this in '92, you knew. Valentine and Von Erich didn't like him for reasons. That, and again, they kind of alluded to the fact that Flair's personality is off-putting to a lot of wrestlers. The Undertaker, even though he wasn't in there as long as some others, still looked good here. It pretty much, he was a babyface a few weeks later. There you have it. Now, the Sid Hogan feud, like I said, I just didn't get it. Even as a kid. I didn't think they were like the close friends that they were trying to say. Like, I even said that to my dad. Like, Hogan and Sid are friends? And Dad's like, well, yeah, at the end of SummerSlam, because we rented SummerSlam on VHS. And I said, I guess. He's like, I guess. Even back then, I'm saying that. Because, I don't know, there's a million different excuses why they didn't go with Hogan and Flair, whatever. But hey, the Savage Flair feud, and I'm going to cover this on a whole different podcast, did not disappoint, in my opinion. It did not. So, no harm, no foul there. He's like, yeah, but Hogan and Flair could have drawn so much money. Well, they drew money in WCW, so there, it did happen. I guess people say their house show match didn't do well. They did well in some markets. It just didn't do as well, I guess, as people thought it would. Again, not everyone knew who Ric Flair was. Again, yes, a vast majority of people did know who Flair was. To those who don't, he still had heat because of his personality and because he's fucking Ric Flair, and he can get heat on himself. But again, a lot of the younger audience in those WWF regions and everywhere else, the markets that weren't WCW strongholds probably did not care much about it. And again, it's nothing against Flair, that's just how it was. Like I said, Hogan and Flair still drew well in a lot of markets. So I wouldn't call it a failure. Maybe it just wasn't the success that they had hoped it would be. But either way, this has been a lot of fun while reminiscing about the Rumble. I will do 2014 next week. Next episode, whenever. I don't know. I'm off schedule lately, folks, and I apologize because just life has been very hectic, and I'm not going to get into that here. But either way, thank you for your patience if you've been waiting, and I hope you enjoyed this. Send me some feedback whenever you want. So yes, next week, Royal Rumble 2014, CM Punk's last wrestling match to this day that he had being in the Rumble match, and of course the Daniel Bryan protest show, they call it. So until then, this is your friend and mine. Oh, social media. Bill Chase 33, both on Instagram and Twitter, and you can add me, Bill Chase, on Facebook. The profile picture is of me holding a microphone in front of the New School Wrestling NSW logo. So check it out there. I like to talk wrestling, especially old-time wrestling. So there you go. So until next time, this is your friend of mine, Bill Chase, quoting a wise Hamiltonian when I tell y'all, don't you dare miss it. Thank you for listening to Diary of a Wrestling Fan with Bill Chase. If you'd like to make a contribution to the show, somebody please find Mike Forte's hairstyling tips and steal them and get them for Bill, because you know what? He could use them.